Now we're going to look at the role that Herbert Hoover played as president during the Great Depression. So our learning objectives are to explain President Hoover's basic philosophy about the proper role of government, to explain the actions that Hoover took in response to the Great Depression, and to describe how the nation responded to Hoover's efforts. So let's look at Hoover's philosophy. Herbert Hoover came to the presidency with a core set of beliefs that he had formed over a long career in business and government service. He had served in the Harding and Coolidge administrations and shared many of their ideas about the government's role in business, favoring as little government intervention as possible. Hoover believed unnecessary government threatened prosperity and the spirit of the American people. A key part of this spirit was something that he called rugged individualism. Hoover didn't reject government oversight or regulation of certain businesses, or think that businesses should do exactly as they pleased, but he thought that it was important not to destroy people's belief in their own responsibility and power. According to Hoover, individualism did not rule out cooperation. Hoover thought that businesses should form voluntary associations to make the economy more fair and efficient. Skilled government specialists would then cooperate with the associations. Hoover called this the associative state. As Coolidge's Secretary of Commerce and as President, Hoover put his beliefs into action, calling together meetings of business leaders and experts to discuss ways of achieving national goals. One example was the building of Hoover Dam that demonstrated Hoover's beliefs in business and government. The dam harnessed the Colorado River to provide electricity and a safe, reliable water supply to parts of 7 states. The federal government provided the funding for the project, which was approved in the 1920s and built in the 1930s. A group of 6 independent companies joined together to design and construct it. Hoover's core beliefs that government should not provide direct aid but find ways to help the people help themselves shaped his presidency. Before the market crash, Hoover tried to help farmers by strengthening farm cooperatives. A cooperative is an organization owned and controlled by its members who work together for a common goal. For example, if you look at some of the ads we see, Blue Diamond almond growers, for example, use their pooled resources to run commercials with the slogan, "A can a week is all we ask." We've seen many milk commercials that were created by dairy associations. So that would be an example of what we're talking about. After the crash, Hoover continued to believe in voluntary action, and he urged business and government leaders not to lay off workers, hoping that their cooperation would help the economic crisis pass. Now, of course, individual businesses were concerned about their own bottom line. Government leaders were concerned about the state of the economy and the impact that it would have long term, and so he didn't get that cooperation that he was looking for. Businesses cut jobs and wages, and state and local governments cut programs and laid off workers. The crisis persuaded Hoover to go against his beliefs and to establish the Reconstruction Finance Corporation in 1932. This was a program that provided $2 billion in direct government aid to banks and institutions. Later that year, he asked Congress to pass the Federal Home Loan Bank, a program to encourage home building. One of Hoover's major efforts to address the economic crisis was the 1930 Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act. Now, of course, we've talked about this before, and once again, tariffs are taxes on imported goods that raise their cost, making it more likely that Americans will purchase cheaper American-made goods. The Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act was a disaster. It was originally designed to help farmers, but it was expanded to include a large number of manufactured goods. The high tariff rates were unprecedented, and when European nations responded with tariffs on American goods, international trade fell dramatically. By 1934, trade was down 2/3 from its 1929 level. Hoover eventually saw the limitations of his ideals and pushed for some direct relief, but his optimistic claims about the economy undermined his credibility with voters. Early on, when millions lost their jobs, he said the nation's basic economic foundation was sound. Just a few months after the crash, he announced, "I'm convinced that we have passed the worst." And he spoke glowingly about the relief efforts. Millions of Americans did not share Hoover's viewpoint. Many Americans came to question Hoover's compassion. As economic conditions grew worse, his unwillingness to consider giving direct relief to the people became hard for most Americans to understand. And when Hoover finally broke his stated beliefs and pushed for programs like the Reconstruction Finance Corporation, people wondered why he was willing to give billions of dollars to banks and businesses, but not to individuals. And in May of 1932, some World War I veterans set up camp near the Capitol in what became known as the Bonus March to pressure the federal government to pay a veterans bonus, which was a cash award that they were promised for their war service. The bonus was not due for many years, but the men needed the money. Congress refused to meet the demands of the bonus marchers, and some left, but a core group remained, including women and children. In July, as police and U.S. soldiers began clearing the area of veterans, violence erupted and the camp went up in flames, injuring hundreds. Hoover did not want to pay the bonus because he was concerned about balancing the budget. However, many Americans were greatly disturbed by the sight of soldiers using weapons against homeless veterans. The public's opinion of Hoover fell even more. Trying to balance the budget, Hoover pushed for and signed a large tax increase in 1932. This move was highly unpopular because voters wanted more government spending to aid the poor. The 1930 congressional elections provided early signs the public was fed up with President Hoover. The Democrats finally won the majority of seats in the House of Representatives and made gains in the Senate. By the 1932 presidential election, it seemed certain that Hoover would lose the race. The Great Depression showed few signs of ending, and Hoover's ability to influence the people and events was nearly gone.